Hey everyone, this is Jay again, here with Joe from Eno Supply, doing another episode on our Worx Plus Knowledge series. In this episode, we're going to be talking about our very expansive and extremely popular spec resin line. So we've got a lot to cover, so let's get into it. Specs, one of our most popular tools, would you say?
Definitely.
We move, I think, more of these almost by a significant margin than any other resin tool that we have in our line. What do you like about this tool, and which one do you think we move the most of, would you say?
Definitely move the 50 specs the most. I think my favorite on the table right now from experience would be maybe one of these 5-inch spec 5s. I haven't got the opportunity to run the Enduro, but this is probably the fastest transition tool I've ran on an edge. You cut down, not the craziest lips, but you can knock down some lips, really get your floor flat. Pretty rigid tool, but if you do your metal cuts pretty decently, it'll be a very fast and easy transition step.
So this whole line is designed to be following after a metal tool,
Yep.
right? So if we take a look at the design itself, we can get a pretty good idea of where it's supposed to be fitting into the process, right? So larger segmentation usually means that we're going to be down in our lower grits, because if we have very large segments, they're going to be generating more heat. And as we get higher up in our process, we're generating a denser surface, means more heat, right? So large segmentation is going to be really good for going through coarse textures, right? So like right after our 120 metals, this 50 specialty is going to just be an absolute tank after your surface prep and getting into the honing. Another part of the design that we have is we've got really large clearance channels running through this tool. Really likes to be ran through a little bit of densifier. Missing some densifier in front of this is going to actually increase the output and scratch removal that you would get from it rather than just going straight dry. Where does this come from? Why did this tool sort of come to be?
The main transition tool used to be a ceramic. And so a couple of different issues with those. One of the biggest factors being heat. With this being a resinous material, it's gonna withstand heat a lot better. So keep that tool productive.
That ceramic wouldn't like densifier in front of it.
It hated it. I had flashbacks earlier when we were talking about it. Just the nasty swirls and just weird things you experience with ceramics. These kind of were introduced to eliminate those.
Yep.
So really, really good
So speed.
advance.
So more of like in commercial settings and when we needed to get out of those metal steps and through our honing steps.
Yep.
Through large, grocery store and like retail spaces and needing to get that process done quickly, but then also be generating a smooth enough profile that's making it even faster into our next step. So like you said, it'll cut like a ceramic. Even though it's a resin tool, it's an extremely hard bond resin. So since it's got a hard bond resin and a large concentration of diamonds, it ends up being that harder bond that can withstand going through that really aggressive metal texture, right? If you tried running a soft resin tool through a 120 grit metal, you're gonna smoke it, right? It's not gonna be able to hold up to the demand. So large surface area of tooling and that hard bond is gonna make it last really well through those resins. And since it is a resin tool, it's starting to close the floor off earlier, right? So even though that this is a 50 grit, if we ran this in comparison, say to like a 200 ceramic, this 50 grit is going to be leaving more of a comparable finish at 50 to what a 200 ceramic would. So we're generating better DOI and better clarity and gloss potential in our floor earlier on in our process, right? It is a very flat, rigid tool, right? It's sort of stiff. This is one of the older specs that we have in our line. This is the original. If you're needing to follow, say, a wavy floor that's got high spots and low spots, you can actually just crack this tool. And if you run this in conjunction with some rip changes with a little bit of flex on them, you can actually start following the contour of that floor a little bit better. So it is a rigid tool and can make a very flat surface still if you've got a flat finish from your metal steps. But if you're needing to do something that you haven't cut the floor all the way back and you're needing it to follow the floor, this original spec is going to be a really good option for that. These come in a 50 grit, 100 grit, and 200 grit. So that also speaks to where they fit within the process of polishing, right? Yep. It's just a powerhouse for honing and getting into those polishing steps a lot faster.
Right.
The next and newest tool that we have, well, one of the newest tools that we have in our line is the Spec Pros. Have you ran these before?
Ran them once, twice. I got to run them twice, yeah.
What do you think of these?
Man, these were a great transition and a really good tool that hit the market when I first was in the field and polishing, and then got away from it and came back and had the opportunity to run these a few months ago, and it was night and day difference. I mean, these are great tools, but the speed and the scratch pattern and the heat, really good pattern coming out the back, and just really what we were looking for. So
I think a lot of the lessons that was learned from the original spec, then basically got beefed up right into all the same concepts that make this tool so fantastic. We just maximized all of those traits and increased the benefits, right? So we've got even wider channels, so it's able to work through even more densifier, which means that you can possibly things that you wouldn't be able to get out. There's a reason we haven't replaced these in the line and they're still there, is this is a much larger tool and it's going to be more rigid, right? So this is very good for when you've gotten that floor flat and you don't have any lips or humps and bumps. This is going to be a much more rigid flat tool. That being said, when you've got that floor dialed in and you've gotten everything out, the speed of which that you can be moving through these is going to be quite a bit faster than this standard spec tool, right? Another added benefit is because we've got this sort of like banana shape here, we're able to load up our discs, and when we have less space in between our tooling, we're able to generate a more consistent profile and scratch pattern coming out the back of that machine, right? Able to hold up to heat and temperature, the same thing with that densifier being able to clear out of those channels. We've got more airflow working through those. Same thing, these are going to be coming in 50, 100, 200 grit. They were originally, called pros because they were for like the very professional user, guys that were getting their floors really nice and flat through the grinding process. But even when we put these in the hands of guys that maybe they haven't gotten that floor completely ironed out, we've found them to have a lot of success with being able to sort of leverage that little bit of extra densifier they put down on the floor to get that higher scratch removal rate. So if you guys are running ceramics or anything like that, I would definitely give these a shot. I think there's nothing more frustrating than when you start getting that heat swirl from a ceramic. You really can't redline a motor on a ceramic. They either like to be run fully dry or fully wet. Right. And when you're running them dry, you've got to back that throttle down a lot. So you're running them maybe only half speed to be looking after that temperature. These things like being ran at a very, very full speed. Yeah. If we can run these at a faster speed, we can be moving the machine a lot quicker, right? Yeah. So the faster we can get our disc spinning, the faster we can get our wheel travel speed, getting more square feet done in every day. That's what all of this whole tooling line's about, is just production, production, production. We also have these in a angle grinder line. We've got two types. We've got the standard spec here. It's got those large clearance channels just like the rest of them, so it's able to work through some more densifier and also cut through some hard, dense material, like a harder troweled concrete. It's a rigid tool, right? So if you guys are running ceramics for your transition tool, if you're familiar with the ceramic, all the same traits that we've talked about with these other tools apply to this. Doesn't really get hot, is able to work through densifier. It's going to cut like a ceramic, but it's going to leave more of that much finer resin profile behind that machine. New tool in the line, the Enduro, right? Same tool, but we've got a much larger surface area on that tool. So if we're working through, say, a softer or a like medium hardness concrete, this is going to be able to get that scratch removal but not wear nearly as fast as this one would. So you can sort of pick which tool you're going to be using based off of the matrix that you're working with. Right. Another benefit of having this large segmentation in this spec line is a lot of times when guys are polishing and you start to see you've got your aggregate shining really well and you've got that substrate more dull. A lot of times that's happening because you're using a softer bond tool with a smaller segmentation that is sort of pulling into that substrate, right? And starting to pull that floor apart. Whereas when we have that large surface area on our diamond, it's able to sort of bridge the gap between those resins and sit flat on that and not be pulling that substrate apart. So when we're wanting to achieve a really nice, flat, consistent gloss level and good DOI all the way throughout the substrate and the aggregate, that larger segment is going to be our friend for it.
Right.
What are these usually following?
These are following our 120 grit metals most of the time, yeah.
So right after you're running your 120 metals, you're jumping into this resin tool.
Correct, yep.
So I think like one of the most common pain points that we get from contractors in their process of polishing is usually that transition step, right? It's usually painfully slow, start generating heat, or just a lot of problems with that transition step. If you guys haven't tried any of these spec tools in your process for a transition, I couldn't recommend them enough. Coming from a contracting background and sort of having that be a struggle of getting out of that process quick enough, haven't really found anything that is as productive and leaves as nice of a finish as this spec product. If any of you guys have used these before, leave a comment, let us know what your thoughts are. If you haven't and you have any questions about how to integrate this into your system and your process, feel free to reach out to myself or Joe or anyone here at Eno Supply and give these a shot. They're an absolute weapon and just a great product. But I think that's it. Cool. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one.